I'm still having some issues. Hold on. Okay, let's see if this works. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of As Good as It Gets. I'm Ricky Hampton, along with my great friend Derrick Gervin, former New Jersey Nets shooting guard. Welcome to the show. Apologize for our technical difficulties a couple of minutes ago, but we're up and running now. And Derek was joined by one of the legends of the game, the one and only Matt Calvin, one of the greatest players in ABA and NBA history. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ricky and Derek. So good to see you guys and be on your show this evening. There's a lot to talk about, a lot going on. And now that baseball's out of the way, and I'm happy for the Texas Rangers that from my hometown of Fort Worth, Texas, happy for them. They certainly deserve it. But I'm happy to be on to talk about basketball.
It's good to get back to the game we all love. Hey guys, before we get into the start of the season, I think it's appropriate that we take a couple of minutes to remember two of the greatest names in the history of this sport that helped build the legacy of basketball to where it is today. And I'm going to start at the college ranks. I want to play this little piece right here.
As the General, Bob Knight was one of the biggest personalities in the history of college basketball. He coached at Indiana University from 1971 to 2000, and he finished his career with 7 more seasons at Texas Tech. In 42 years on the sidelines, he won 902 games. That ranks 3rd all time. The banners in Assembly Hall tell the story. Knight led the Hoosiers to 3 NCAA titles, 1 NIT title, and 11 Big Ten championships. His 1975-76 team went undefeated and won the national title. That squad is the last men's team to go undefeated from start to finish. Knight was the National Coach of the Year 4 times, and he led the USA to a gold medal in the Olympics in 1984. He was praised for running clean programs and graduating players, but he often sparked controversy with his fiery personality. He was outspoken and often clashed with the media.
Looky here. Bobby Knight just threw his chair.
Bob Knight made headlines in 1985 with one of the most famous ejections ever. He tossed a chair across the court during a game against Purdue.
Unfortunately, there have been many instances in the last 17 weeks in which Coach Knight has behaved and acted in a way that is both defiant and hostile.
Knight's years of coaching at IU came to an abrupt halt when he was fired in the fall of 2000 after a run-in with a student. But many of the IU faithful stood by his side. He never returned to Assembly Hall until February 2020, when dozens of his former players joined him on the court. The General got a hero's welcome home. Rest in peace, Coach. Bob Knight was 83 years old.
That's courtesy of WTHR in Indianapolis. Mac, you're our special guest tonight. Let's start with you on your thoughts of Bobby Knight.
Well, my condolences to his family. Bobby Knight, let's remember all the great things that he did. And I think too often we think about 1 or 2 negative incidents, situation that took place. But Bob Board was my basketball coach at USC. And Bob Board and Bobby Knight were very close friends. And so I got to meet him back in the early 80s when I was go back to some basketball clinics at Bob Board's camp. And I found him an extraordinary, knowledgeable basketball individual. Knew a lot about the game. He really was the first to start the passing game, the motion offense that you see now with the pick and roll and a lot of other pieces to it. But Bobby Knight was the first one that started. Dean Smith started the 4 corners, which led to the triangle offense that Phil Jackson, Tex Winter, really implemented back in their successful days with the Lakers and with Chicago. But it was really Bobby Knight that really started the game of passing, moving, cutting and all 5 players touching and sharing the basketball. So I have a lot to say. He was also one of the first coaches in NC2A to allow black ball players to play for him. When you think about the Quinn Buckners of the world, the Scotty Mays and Isaiah Thomas and Mike Woodson, some of those players, they were his star players. And all of them, really, all those guys have came back to support Coach Knight over the years, despite all of his antics, throwing chairs and things that he said. And he did a lot of those things in his later years. And so couldn't get away with that today, Ricky and Derrick, if he was coaching. But he was a true father figure, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for him. And it's my prayers and thoughts for his family at this time. And I don't know what his health condition was in the later years, the last couple of months or so, but he looked like he was really in bad health back in early 2021. But my condolences to his family.
Wow. And I want to send my condolences as well. Ricky, I can go back to the 76. Mr. Calvin just named most of the guys, and then I'll add a few more with the Steve Greens, the Kent Bensons. I mean, Bobby Knight has been around a while. He even coached one of my former teammates, Keith Smart. And what I want people to know is sometimes people always reflect on the bad things, but the man, he paved the way for a lot of people in the game of basketball. All his players were graduating. Which I think is the biggest thing. A lot of times they never talked about. They talked about his impact on the basketball floor, but what about his impact in the classroom? And that was also big to me. He's done a lot of things. And if you really think about it, he's also the gentleman when Michael Jordan was in college. And I know you guys remember, he's the one when he saw Michael Jordan, he said it out of his own mouth, that's the greatest player I've ever seen. And you look back now, all these years later, 47 years later, and a lot of people think Michael Jordan was the greatest player. So he was a visionary. He did a lot of great things. He also impacted Mike Krzyzewski. And as we know, Mike went on to become, I believe, the highest win. He had the win percentage of what be at Duke and the most wins. And all of that was because of Bobby Knight. So he paved the way for a lot of people. And I'm sending my condolences. And he was a great man. He did a lot of great things. I'm not going to harp on the bad things because none of us are perfect. But he left a heck of a legacy, and I loved everything that he's done for the game, and I want to send my condolences sincerely to his family.
I think, guys, when you see when he came back to Indiana in 20, I believe, all of his guys were there.
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas, Quinn, all those guys came back, and that tells you right there, doesn't it, Matt? When the men that you're with every day love and respect you and come back and honor you, that tells you right there.
Without a doubt. And, the one thing that made Isaiah Thomas successful was Bobby Knight early on, because Isaiah never had a father figure. And Isaiah's mom was instrumental in him going to Indiana, being under the tutelage of Bobby Knight. But I got to tell you there were some things. I like the one thing about, and I won't go into it, about when he said when he dies, what they want him to do for him. That's funny, but people will read up on that. But I got to tell you, one of the stories my coach told me, Bob Boyd, who was Bobby Knight's best friend, he said that I can't recall, it was in an NC2A game, can't remember what year it was, and it was Indiana versus LSU with the great coach who was over there,
Dale Brown.
And so Indiana was down by 14 points with 4 or 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and Indiana came back, won the game. So the reporter asked Bobby Knight at the end of the game, he said, "Bobby, you were down 14 points with 3 minutes and something to go." He said, "Were you ever worried about losing this game?" He said, "No, I was never worried." He said, "When I looked down at the end of the bench and I saw that Dale Brown was coaching, I said, I know we can win this game." I thought that was so funny. I mean, coaches are always giving other teams and coaches credit. But he said, when I'm down 14 points, but when I looked down at the end of the bench and saw who was coaching LSU, he said, I had no worries.
And he was a taskmaster. And Derrick, would his coaching style work today? And why is it back then guys received that tough coaching a lot better than they seem to today?
It's just a different time. I mean, times have changed. If you look at it, it wasn't just Bobby Knight, it was also Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes was a football coach at Ohio State. He was another, what they would say, volatile coach. But guys back then, we just we shook it off. I mean, he still was trying to get the best out of you. And I never agree with putting your hands on players and all that. But sometimes coaches use the foul language or I'll say that. But we were all tough, had tough skin, and we looked at the big picture. He was trying to make these guys into men, and that's on the court and off the court. So sometimes you have to overlook things. Even today, with this younger era today, there are certain things you just have to overlook when a coach is showing that he cares about your best interest. And that's why I think a lot of times, if you see all the players that showed up, they were able to overlook all those things. And all they are is, look at me now. Look what he did. Because of this man, I was able to go out there in the world and man up, as they say today, and go out and do something good with my life. And I think that's what I'll remember more than anything else, more than the negative thing.
If I can add to that, and you're right on, Derrick. In those days, in the 70s and 80s, you have to realize that a lot of those players, and certainly the African American players, did not have father figures, but they had strong mothers, and they had a great support system, whether it be uncles, grandfathers. Whereas today, era of young players, they're very sensitive, and they got a lot of mental health challenges, where those mental health challenges wasn't there in those days. It was always the church, there was always the Black community, there was always coaches that supported the players, on and off the court. I never had an African American coach in my life, in pros, college, anywhere, but I respected the coaches, and they respected you. And as Derrick articulated earlier, that Bobby Knight made sure that those kids went to school, they graduated. That was the commitment that he made to those parents. It wasn't that you're going to play in the NBA, you're going to be one and done. I think there's so much emphasis now on playing in the NBA and one and done. And so parents can, get out of the community, the area that they grew up in. So Bobby Knight was really, and Mike Krzyzewski was the same way. I got to put George Raveling in there as well. Those guys really, and Coach Thompson over Georgetown.
John Chaney.
John Chaney.
I'm sorry.
Those guys, Don Chaney. Coach Chaney. They were all father figures, but they cared about the individual. And then Coach Wooden was the same way. He cared about what you were going to be doing in 10, 20 years from now. Bobby Knight was the same way. Now, my high school coach, I tell the story today, some 50-some years later. I never learned anything from that guy, but what he was, I learned how to cuss. That's what I did. He was a great, he had unbelievable profanity, cuss like a sailor, but he cared for me, and he gave me an opportunity as a junior. So, I just, he's a rare breed. I mean, and then also he had a great coaching circle as well. Starting with Mike Krzyzewski. So you can't say enough words about this great guy. And, being a Christian, I know that he's gone on to a better place. And I pray that he didn't have to suffer in these latter months, years. And he will be missed, my friend.
Yeah. Hey, one more guy I want to get to before we get on with some of the news of the day in the NBA and the passing of the great Walter Davis, 6-time All-Star, played in Phoenix and Denver. He was always fun to watch, so smooth and so efficient. Shot 51% for his career, average essentially 19 points a game over the course of his career. Your thoughts on the Greyhound, guys? Start with you, D.
Well, I talked before we came on the air. I thought very highly of Walter Davis. As I'm looking at this clip, it brings back memories the Alvin Adams, the Paul Westphals, the
Yeah,
Garfield Herds. It's just to watch this guy. I mean, once you establish a name and you're able to keep that nickname, the Greyhound. If you remember at that time, he was one of the fastest guys in the NBA from one end to the other.
yeah.
And he was a good guy as well. So I'm going to miss him. I was always excited to watch him play. I loved his style of play. And as you said, Ricky, he was very efficient. And I'm all about efficiency. And it's, for me, it has a special feeling because if you look at the guards of all time in the NBA, especially this last 40, 50 years, I'll say, if you look at players that shot in the backcourt, Walter Davis, of guys that took a lot of shots. George Gervin, 51.4%, and Walter Davis, 51.1%. Those are the only two guys that I can think of that took a high volume of shots that shot over 50%. So that was something special for me. But just that nickname, the Greyhound, and meeting him one time, I'm sending my prayers to his family as well. And neither one, either Walter Davis nor Bobby Knight, will ever be forgotten by me. They left a heck of a legacy. And I appreciate both gentlemen. And I know that they'll be smiling down on us one day soon because they're headed to what they call the ribbon in the sky. They're heading to heaven. And I love both guys.
And Mac, you would have coached against Davis, right?
I did, yeah. And I got a chance to know Walter after I retired from the Denver Nuggets when he was with the Nuggets for a short period of time. Let me just say as well, my condolences to his family. He's part of the NBA family. And for whatever reason, and I know those reasons, he should have been inducted to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame many years ago. But with his accolades on the court and his stardom and what he accomplished during that period in the 80s, he got caught into the drug scene. And I think that really tarnished his image, tarnished what he accomplished, really tarnished the league. And he was also the general manager of that team was Jerry Colangelo. And that Phoenix organization for, I want to say, a good 6 to 10 years really never overcame that until Charles Barkley came there. Never really overcame the drug problems that existed because they had several players that was banned from the league. And I think there was one player, can't think of his name, that passed away.
Not Johnny Hyde.
I'm not quite sure. He was one of the guys that were, banned from the league.
Yeah, Johnny Hyde. Yeah.
But that was during that era. So for a guy to average 19 points a game and shoot 50+% from the field, was a 3-time All-American at North Carolina. It's just unfortunate he's not in the Hall of Fame. And I think too often the basketball community, the world, we forget about the past negative situation that individuals got themselves in that had to mature and had fallen in. I mean, one of my great teammates, David Thompson, had his problem but overcame his challenges, and now he was inducted into the Hall of Fame and just doing a great thing in the community of North Carolina with young people. So Walter is in that category, and I do pray that one day that he will be inducted to the Naismith Hall of Fame because he certainly deserves it. He's right up there among all the great two guards that's around, or small forwards, and he also played 4 years of college basketball. So and he did a lot of great things in his community, and despite his past, he was able to overcome and get back to his community. And so you got to applaud that, Ricky and Derrick. And I'm sorry to hear about his passing. He was young, 69 years old. That's young, man.
And he was a great mid-range shooter. That was his thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, the merger was 76, 77, and they really didn't. The merger, the 3-point shot did not come into an existence until 78 season. And Chris Ford was the first guy to make the 3-point shot. But he would have made a lot of 3-point shots because he had the great pull-up jump shot. So he will be missed. And Again, I apologize if I'm sharing too much about his life, but we have to know the whole story about a person.
Yeah, that's
Mr. Calvin, before we get off of that, can I say something, please, about that? The reason I'm glad you brought it up is because that's the era that the things were going on, right? And I don't sugarcoat it. I had a brother that was back there playing in those days. So, a lot of those guys had challenges. And the reason I'm going to say, I'm going to go with what you said about the Hall of Fame, because there are some other players that were back there in that same era that also made the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So I don't think they should be picky about one guy not making it when other guys have made it. I'm not saying those guys shouldn't have made it, but I'm like you. I'm saying that he also should have made it, and I'm still going to be praying and hoping as we move forward that he does make it, because as a basketball player, which is what you're supposed to be judged by, he was one of the best players, a marquee player in my mind, and I think he deserves, no doubt about it, to be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, well said.
Hey, well, let's get on to the. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about James Harden, really, guys. But I think we got to talk about the trade. That is the big news. And James complained about his time in Philly. He said on the Sixers situation, Philly is just changing my role, knowing I could give more, knowing I could do more. But if you want to be honest, it was like being on a leash. I never really had the opportunity to score and facilitate freely. I don't see where they were holding him back, Matt.
Well, I'm gonna always be honest with you guys, and I have a special feeling in place for James Harden because I've known him since he's 11, 12 years old when he participated in my basketball camp as a young kid in Long Beach, him being from Compton. And so, but this game changes you, man. This game changes the best. And it's all about character. And what I find over my 50 plus years involved in ABA, NBA professional basketball is that guys they forget about where they started, how they started, and it's called humility.
Yes,
and
sir.
A lot of these guys have lost their way with being humble and grateful. Daryl Morey made James Harden a lot of money, well over $300-400 million in the contract. And so as you get older, what you articulated, Ricky, as you get older, players have to make adjustments. What the hell he think he's going to do coming to the Clippers? He is not going to have the ball in his hand, 65, 70% of the time. That is Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's team. And what they do with Russell and James, Ty Lue's going to have to figure that out if they're going to get advanced in the Western Conference, because that's a team that right now on paper, it's 4 Hall of Famers, but that doesn't mean anything if the chemistry doesn't come together, if the egos don't leave the egos in the locker room, they're not going to win. And who's going to suffer is Tyrone Lue. James Harden is not the James Harden when he was 28, 29, 30 years old. He cannot play on a team that's going to have other ball handlers. And when it comes down to crunch time, that ball is going to be in Kawhi Leonard's hand as well as Paul George. And then Russell Westbrook, he still thinks that he's the guy that he was when he was 26 years old. So there's a lot of adjustment that's going on. And that's what James Harden got Doc Rivers fired, because James Harden would not accept his role in Philadelphia. I mean, if you look at the 3 teams he's been with, and that's Houston, he couldn't get along with the coach there and Chris Paul. That was Chris Paul's team to run as a point guard. He couldn't handle the situation, unfortunately, in Brooklyn. And, that was a Kyrie Irving act where he missed 35, 40 games because of the COVID. And then he can't get along. What is his problem? That's an ego, man. And as you and I know, ego is nothing but easing God out and not for the sake of the team. So James Harden's going to have to grow up real quickly. If not, he's going to find himself bouncing around the league over the next couple of years after this season, because nobody's going to want him.
Hey, Derrick, for our viewers out there, break down how this trade can work for the Clippers, and what could go wrong with bringing in a guy like
Well, first of all, I told you
the best
100%.
scenario? The best scenario with
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Well, if you remember, first of all, I told you that 100% that he would never play another game for Philadelphia.
Yes, sir.
So they dragged it on and they drug it out as long as they could. The positive, here's the problem I have, Ricky. First, let me say this quickly. James Harden last year, he led the NBA in assists. He averaged 20 points and 11 assists, 21 points and 11 assists a game. And you're playing with the MVP. So that didn't work out for the reasons that we know. Mr. Calvin stated it. He wants to lead the league in scoring. And to me, that's just pure lunacy. You're not the guy that you were 4 or 5 years ago when you were averaging 37 points, 35 points. So it's called making an adjustment now. He's made all the money he can ever make, that he could ever spend. So now it's about winning. And when you go to the Clippers, the biggest problem with the Clippers is they self-destruct. They did it last night because they don't have a true leader. They haven't had a true leader since Chris Paul. And I got to tell both of you guys something. We talk about chemistry. I watched James Harden yesterday walk into the locker room, the LA Clipper locker room, and he was greeted by Russell Westbrook. But the gentleman who they refused to trade, the deal was held up so long because Terrence Mann was in the deal, and they didn't want to give up Terrence Mann. So yesterday, Westbrook and James hugged. Terrence Mann is sitting right next to Westbrook. He doesn't even acknowledge James Harden. He just looked at him. So that's a problem when we talk about chemistry. That's not a good way to get off to a good start at the beginning of a new season. And so Ty Lue has a very hard job. I said before that Steve Nash was going to be the one getting the Tums commercial. Now I think sadly it's going to be Ty Lue, because he got man. If you think about it, Kawhi, who was my favorite player, of course, Ricky, you know that he's been my favorite player since 2014. But Kawhi is not a vocal leader. He tries to lead by example. Paul George is not really a vocal leader, and we know after he went through his thing in the bubble, he started calling himself Playoff Pete. We know that didn't go too well. So he was all about himself. And then you got Russell Westbrook, who I respect his athleticism and all that, but I don't think Russ is one of the most intelligent point guards I've ever seen. And he showed that again last night near the end of the game, while he's over there sliding around like he's on the bobsled team. And then you bring in James Harden. If these guys come out and play together and incorporate the rest of their team and the players on the bench, and then you got guys like Zubac, who's a good player. You got Mason Plumlee. They got a good squad. But all of these guys have to basically, it's not about me, me, me. It's about we. And if these guys go out and trust Ty Lue and trust the other coaches and play for each other, that's a team that can go far. So we just have to see what happens. They have the potential on paper, but without chemistry, you don't win. And we found that out last year with Golden State. So hopefully they'll think about the big picture. It's about us. It's not about me. And if they can do that, there'll be a trouble. They'll cause trouble in the Western Conference.
Well, I love you, little brother, but let me tell you what, you're absolutely wrong. That team will be lucky if they're the 4th or 5th seed in the Western Conference. You tell me right now, who are they better? First of all, let me go back and say to you, and I love you because your basketball IQ is off the chart, Derrick, and being a former player and a coach, man, it takes time to build a winning culture. And it doesn't happen in 4 or 5 months. It takes time. And they don't have enough time with all those egos. Derrick, you are just articulated Russell Westbrook. At the end, he thought that was his team. You know, what he was doing correctly early on was driving to the basket and facilitating and attacking the rim. But then he stopped doing that. And then the other thing I got to say is that if you look at Denver, it's taken them some time. They got the best player in the league, will be the best player in the league for the next 5-6 years in the Joker. But you have to have a good relationship with players, with your teammates on and off the court. And James Harden is not that kind of guy. Russell Westbrook is not that kind of guy. And then the other point I want to make, and they gave up the lead last night. I because they played the night before. They played Orlando, and it was a tough game for 3 quarters. So that took a lot out of them. But then they forgot the way they got the lead, how to play. That was Kawhi Leonard leading that team, and he just ran out of gas as well. And then Paul George took over. But they have enough pieces there. But I just don't think that their personality and their attitudes and the chemistry will be enough for them to get to the Western Conference Finals.
Mr. Calvin, that's basically what I just said, sir. I'm on the same side as you, whether chemistry or not. I just said the same thing.
Yeah,
I don't think they can make it.
I wanted D to give us both sides of it on that too. And I hope you guys got to see. I played that little clip of him coming into the locker room. And you're right, Terrence Mann is just going about his business.
Ricky, can I say this? The reason I say that they can go well, I don't expect them to come out of the West, right? Or even get to the Western Conference Finals. But the reason I say that it's not always just the reason I say they have time is that's because it's the same with the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix hasn't been together either with Bradley Beal and the new players that they brought in. But if you notice, once they got the new guys they brought in with Nurkic and all those guys, they became one of the favorites to win in the Western Conference. So it kind of, I know sometimes it takes a lot of time to develop chemistry, but if you have guys that are willing to work at it, they spend enough time together over the course of a year where they can make some noise in the Western Conference. But it has to be every guy sacrifice, come out of their comfort zone and realize it's about us and it's not about me. If you do that, you always have a chance. I'm not saying they're going to win, but you always have a better chance.
It's a different era now, Derrick. It's a different era with these guys, okay? And you look, and I agree with Phoenix has a chance, but Father Time, and I've said on your show many times, Ricky, Father Time never lies, and nothing's going to change. You think that Bradley Beal all of a sudden is going to play 85, 90% of his game? You think Kevin Durant's going to all of a sudden play 90% of his game? And Devin Booker has a history. You go to the Lakers. You think that Anthony Davis is going to all of a sudden play 80, 90% of his game? The same with the West is tough. You miss 15, 20 games in the season, you're going to find yourself back in 4th, 5th position and perhaps a play-in. And then you go and you look at the Clippers. Oh, my God. What's the percentage that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have played together over the last couple of years? So those factors, they don't lie, man. They come back. It's a long season, So if guys are hurt and not playing, you miss games in the season, you're going to find yourself really struggling to get home court advantage.
And let me go here. Our great friend Corleone Young's checking in. Beautiful conversation. Saying what's up, Derrick? You are the and
Corleone, I love you, man.
Corleone's talking about a lot of individuality and not enough balls to go around. I think he's talking about the Clippers with that because he thinks they're going to underachieve. But man, let's spend a little time in the West because I've never seen this conference as loaded
ever
as it is now. I mean, how many legitimate teams are there you think could come out of the West? Denver, defending champion. I think the Lakers are capable if they're healthy. Phoenix, Golden State, all these teams are dangerous.
Sacramento.
All these teams are dangerous. Go with you, Matt, then Derrick.
Well, I mean, Sacramento is still young. They're trying to figure themselves out. I think in another year or two, they will be even dangerous. I think making the playoffs last year was a major step in their progress. You still got a young Fox, and you've got that kid that's going to be really great on that team is this Murray kid. Yeah. He's a phenomenal player. Really? Great attitude comes to play. So they'll make the playoffs. And then you can't, in terms of a team that's going to be tough night in and night out, is OKC. I mean, they've got a nice young squad. that will probably be 6, 7, best team in the conference. And then you look at, a team like New Orleans. New Orleans will be there, but everything depends on the health of Zion and Ingram. Here's Ingram's out already. They haven't played 10 games, and he's missed 2 games already. So
Zion's not playing tonight either.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, that's a back-to-back. And I can understand. But again, that's what the commission was trying to get away from, the workload of some of these guys. That they got to play. So I like the format that if you don't play 65, 70% of your games during the season, you can't make all conference, or you can't make all league. And that's where a lot of these guys' bonus monies come from, by making first, second, or third team of the third team. But again, it boils down to me, in my opinion, the 2 top teams on paper are the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets, by far. I mean, they're the most talented team, and I agree. Derrick said something earlier. Nurkic have joined them, and I think he's going to be a great addition to them, along with some other players that they picked up. So
Grayson Allen,
he no pressure on him. I mean, he's still one of the most hated players in the league. he got that reputation from college. He's just one of those dirty players you like to punch in the face when you're playing against him. You really do. And so, I think it's those 2 teams. I think it's the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns. The Lakers, you just can't. I'm not a betting guy, but I wouldn't put $1 on them, especially with Anthony Davis. When he falls, you wonder if he's going to get up. So that's my look at it, Derrick and Ricky.
Hey. Well, go ahead, D. Let you jump in on that.
There's only I like Oklahoma City. I've talked about them on our show. I just think they're going to be one of the up and coming teams because I love Chet Holmgren. But if I'm talking about winning the championship, you already know I posted the other day. I picked my finals. The Denver Nuggets winning again against the Boston Celtics. I just think I like Phoenix, but I just don't know how that's going to work with Devin Booker and Bradley Beal sharing the ball handling duties. I think they're going to miss a Chris Paul's leadership, and then they also got rid of Cameron Payne, and I think that's going to come and hurt them down the stretch when it becomes a half-court game in the playoffs. I don't see Bradley Beal as being a point guard, and I really don't see Devin Booker learning that quick how to decide between scoring and being a distributor. Because if you look at it, they still need his points. And I know they have Mr. Okogie, Josh Okogie in the starting lineup for defense. And you have Yusuf Nurkic. But I just think they have a good team, better on paper. But I don't see them even going past a team like the Lakers. And I have to say this about the Lakers quickly. A lot of people wrote them off last year. But Ricky, I told you when they were 2-10. I wasn't on that bandwagon. And I believe this year they're a better team. The thing is, they have to figure out. I don't think LeBron, I know he doesn't, like playing with D'Angelo Russell. And that's the biggest issue to me is who's going to be the guy that's going to be running the offense? Is it going to be LeBron with the ball in his hands? We know sometime he will. Is Austin Reeves going to have the ball? Because he's also a guy that can break down the defense, and he's very good in the pick and roll. They just have to figure out who's going to be the guys that are going to have the ball in crunch time. They have a very good bench. They brought in Taurean Prince. They brought in Cam Reddish. They brought in Gabe Vincent, and they brought in Jackson Hayes. And now you have a Hachimura, who we know played. He played very well in the playoffs, and Austin Reeves played well. So they have a really good lineup, and they brought in, as you say, Christian Wood. To me, that's a team that can be a very formidable team. It's going to take time, but I could see the Lakers being the team that meet Phoenix if everybody stays healthy. That would be my pick, would be the Lakers versus Denver, just like last year.
But that's my problem with them, if everybody stays healthy.
Well, that's every team in the league, Ricky.
Oh, that's true. But I think I think LeBron played 40 minutes last night. You can't do that.
The workload, the workload. That's you listen. You can't. A 38-year-old guy and a guy who is prone to injuries all the time. AD, you can't look at them. Yeah, they got a lot of pieces, but you got a lot of pieces that have never won. Cam Reddish has just been bouncing from team to team to team. Christian Wood, I think, is a steal. Austin Reeves came on this summer and played well, but those guys, have not shown consistency. Now, when you're talking about somebody who handling the ball in the last 4 or 5 minutes, Derek, that's LeBron James. That's his team at the end of the game. At the end of the day, and then going back and looking at all these other teams, there really are no prototype point guards in the league. Chris Paul's an old school point guard, but there aren't any other guys. Devin Booker played the point a lot last year and shared the ball at the end of the game. So that you can see that same scenario. Bradley Beal tried to when he was in Washington, but he's not a facilitator. He's a scorer, and then so they got the pieces, they got a system. So they're going to be dangerous if they stay healthy. That's the key again.
Let's talk about Chris Paul in San Francisco, D. My thing with him is their size. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to get there. I think he's a great addition because of his basketball IQ, his intelligence. But to me, they didn't address the biggest issue. The biggest issue to me was under that basket. They had Kevon Looney, who played great, but he's not really a rim protector. And then they got Draymond Green. Other than that, they didn't really upgrade in the front court. And to me, that's what beat them last year. We know they're already sound in the backcourt. They lost Jordan Poole, but they still have Clay, who won the game last night at the end with 0.2 seconds left. And they still have Steph Curry. And Draymond is back. I think yesterday was his first game. But I just don't think they have enough size. They get out rebounded a lot. And I think that's what's going to beat them is they give up too many offensive rebounds. And I just can't see them advancing. I'm loving Chris Paul playing with them, but they didn't address their size differential. And who's going to guard Jokic when it comes down to it? So for me, I like Golden State, but I don't see them advancing very far. Just like similar to last year.
Well, they're one of the top 4 teams in this league. And talking about Chris Paul, all Chris Paul is another coach. And what he's done, unlike Harden, is that he's accepted his role on that team. He can come off the bench or start. He's accepted that. And he's coaching those young kids. And with the addition of Moody, they don't miss Poole. Okay? They've got last year they had a chemistry problem. They had an attitude problem. Started at the beginning. Draymond Poole. Started at the beginning of the year. Okay? Steph is still Steph. Steph is old school, takes care of himself, loves his family, does things in the community. He's going to be around. He's got another good 4 to 5 years left in being at that same level. His dad did it. He can do it as well. So that's a team that's won 3 championships. They've got chemistry now. The key to that team, in my opinion, is Wiggins. And, they don't have to play big all the time because the league is not big. The league other than the Joker in Denver, ain't nobody else big in that league.
Hey, Mr. Calvin, let me say this, sir. Don't leave out Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon.
Michael Porter Jr. is like, like the weather, man. You can't predict. He's just so inconsistent. You see what they did the other night?
I watched.
One had 8 points, another had 4 points.
But I'm talking about their height. I'm talking about the present.
You still got to deal with your physicality.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm talking about, Ricky. Thank you.
As the great Moses Malone said, Michael Porter had 1 rebound. Moses Malone said, "Man, you had 1 more rebound than a dead man."
Mr. Calvin, you have to remember now. They call Draymond Mr. Triple Single. Now you can't leave that out.
Well, there's no comparison. Draymond's got 5 fingers, and on 3 of those fingers.
Hey, sir, but I heard you also say you picked Denver to win the championship, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I picked him last year.
And that's what I'm saying. So
on the same page.
But they got enough pieces, man. Well, all I'm saying, Denver has that winning altitude, and you got to go into Denver and play 41. Those teams got to play 41 road games in Denver, which is one of the most difficult places to play because your lungs is burning by the end of the first quarter. It is tough to play and win in Denver.
Yeah.
And you played, and Mr. Calvin played in Denver, ladies and gentlemen. I love it.
He knows it. He knows for real.
Yeah,
who had the second best record in the West last year? The Memphis Grizzlies.
The Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah. They are currently 0-5. Is this team? Do we just when Ja comes back, can he rescue them?
No.
Yeah, you want to go first? Go ahead, Mr. Calvin.
Yeah. Hey,
No,
listen. Only person been rescued from the dead was Lazarus, and Jesus rescued him. So ain't nobody else gonna be rescued from the dead. All right. That team is done. And that's the DONE, capital D. They're done. And they lost. I don't like him, but they lost the heart and soul of that team by not signing Dylan Brooks. You know, and I love JJ Jackson, but he's the softest toilet paper. So Charmin toilet paper. You know, great talent and everything. They just don't have a good team. And by the time Ja get back, if he gets back and healthy, they may be 10, they may be 10 and 18 or 8 and 18. You know, they just don't have it. And they just, they need to look at what the lottery looks like, because they just don't have the pieces to compete in the West. And even Minnesota with all their pieces, that's another team that's lost.
The biggest issue for me for Memphis is the loss of Steven Adams first, and then Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark won't be back till later in the season. We know he missed all of last year. He went out early in the season as well. So they don't have size. And for me, Jaren is not a center. And that was shown in the FIBA games. Jaren is more of a power forward, and he's more of a help defender. He got a defensive player of the year because of help defense. He's not the type of guy going to be locking down a Jokic or Embiid or anyone like that. So that hurts them. When Jaren Jackson is your biggest guy, his dad actually lives in San Antonio. Jaren, I ain't telling all your business, but his dad, I've talked to his dad. We used to play together. But Jaren is a really good player, but they don't have enough. I'm glad they brought in Derrick Rose and they brought in Marcus Smart. That adds toughness, and it adds a little more, basketball IQ. But they're shorthanded, Ricky, and that's going to end up hurting them. We got guys like Xavier Tillman, who brings his lunch pail every night, but he's a very good, a serviceable player, but they just don't have enough. And when Ja gets back, they still not going to have enough. I expect them to get better, but this is not the year of the Memphis Grizzlies.
I agree. I concur.
Let's go east, young man, because I think the Boston Celtics are going to be a problem. And if anybody's going to be Denver, it's going to be them. Your thoughts on the Celtics, Matt, and then ED?
Well, I told you the story about Bobby Knight when he looked down at the end of the bench and saw who was coaching. When you look down at the bench of Boston Celtics and see who's coaching, you are in trouble, because that young man is like a deer in the country with headlights. He has really no clue, and then the players start losing respect for him at the end of the year. It is difficult for an assistant coach who's got 8-10 years in the league as a top assistant coach to move over to the next seat. But when you move over in that next seat after 1 or 2 years as the number one assistant coach, it's difficult. And I know he picked up Sam Cassell, but everybody goes by the head coach. So they've got problems there if you want to look at a matchup. It's the same with Milwaukee as well. I think they're going to have problems until they get a number one assistant coach there. But I just think at the end of the day, you can't count on Porzingis. I just think he's like Anthony Davis. He's all glitter and he's shining now, but he's just not a consistent player. Al Horford is 37, 38 years old. They just don't have enough pieces coming off the bench to really sustain themselves throughout the playoffs. But Milwaukee, when they get it together, and they haven't gotten it together yet, they've lost 2 games and one of those games by a blowout. But when they get it together with Portis, with Crowder, they have another problem with Don Shashinki, the other kid, the shooting guard. I'm not a big fan of his. He hasn't proven it. So they need another piece or two off the bench. Cameron Payne, so far, I know you like him, Ricky. He's the point guard off the bench. He's proven to be more of a scoring guard than he is a facilitator. And so they're going to need that. They missed Carter, who was a facilitator last year. He's now, I think, with another team. I think with Brooklyn.
Javon Carter, yes.
Yeah. No, with Brooklyn. But they're going to need that. But at the end of the day, that young boy, Giannis, will lead them to another championship, in my opinion, because of Damian Lillard.
But see, D, why I like Boston is because of the acquisition of Porzingis and Drew Holiday. Your
but
thoughts?
but Drew is not a scorer though. Drew is they this is a scoring league, and again I agree with it. They on paper they look good, but when you look at matchups, that's where I go by, and I'll let Derrick talk. When you look at matchup, when you match up five players against the other 5 players, who's the best player? Milwaukee is by far is the best. And when you look at that bench, and when you look at that what they've done in the past and with veteran players, I think they're going to be tough to beat. Time will tell.
And I don't even know if Milwaukee's going to come second in the Eastern Conference. And one of the reasons is I've seen that a little Giannis has kind of went back to the old Giannis from the 2019, 2020, back in those days when he was struggling at the free throw line. And now you get rid of Drew Holiday, who I think is one of the best every year, one of the best defenders in the league. Not only that, he's basically a true point guard. He gets guys in the right spots. He takes a lot of pressure off of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as far as handling the ball in clutch situations. And I like Mr. Porzingis, Mr. Calvin. Porzingis averaged 23 points and 9 rebounds with the Washington Wizards, and he was healthy. So that's what I'm looking at.
Derrick, you would average 18 points a game with Milwaukee with that bad team.
Well, I'll average 18 with any team. But my point is, when you look at my only problem with Boston right now, but I know they'll address it, it's the bench. Kevin Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and those guys have been struggling.
Right.
But I think as we know, we always have a trade deadline. So I like Joe Mazzulla. I think it was an experience for him last year. He learned a lot more. And then he's with these guys every day this year. He's not a bad coach. He was like a deer in the headlights last year. So he has another year of experience. And then I just think something about Jason Tatum. I just think he's going to continue to ascend. And I just like him. I think Jaylen Brown's happy now with his new $304 million contract. And I like their team. They also have off the bench, you could bring Luke Cornett off the bench. And you got Al Horford. So I like that. I like that team. You laughing, Mr. Calvin, but you know we had people laughing last year, and then you'll be telling me later that Derrick, I should have listened to you.
Luke Cornett, Luke Cornett can't. I coached his father in Milwaukee. Luke Cornett's not gonna put fear in anybody, please.
He doesn't. It's not about the fear, sir. It's about getting in there doing your job. He cleans up a lot of loose balls. He alters a lot of shots, and he plays hard for every second he's on the court. To me, we talked about chemistry. It's not always about individual talent. It's how you bring all that talent together. And I like Boston. I just think Boston is the best team. Giannis is. I don't even know how the Giannis and Dame thing is going to work out. We keep hearing about it. If we remember, Dame had 39 the first game. Next game, he had 6.
Yeah.
So we don't even know how that chemistry is going to work out. Chris Middleton is still hurt. He's never been the same guy since he went and helped Team USA. See, those are the things I factor in. Pat Connaughton has not been the same player.
Yeah. Well, it's early in the season. I think they're 2-2, and they've been on the road. I think of 2 or 3 of those games. It's early in the season, but when you got a potent scorer, and I they're not. Listen, when you're a poor free throw shooter, you're a poor free throw shooter, and and this kid is, Giannis has never been a great free throw shooter, and he's probably not going to improve that much. He's a 70% free throw shooter. And it could hurt them in the playoff. But when you've got the top 3 player in the league and Giannis, I can't see him beat anyone.
Mr. Calvin, can I ask, Rick, let me say this quickly. Mr. Calvin, who do you expect to have the ball at the end of the game? Whose hands are the ball going to be in?
That ball is going to be in the hand of Giannis. They're going to put him at the elbow or in the middle of the court, and they're going to score.
I think okay.
No, that's just. But they have a system, and Dame will handle the ball and more in the pick and roll. They'll have a lot more pick and roll with Dame and Giannis. But
you see my hand, sir?
Dame time.
Dame time.
Yeah.
So you say Giannis is going to have the ball. The guy that's a terrible free throw shooter. See, they got to figure that out because I think Dame.
The pick and roll will get them there. See, he's not going. There's not going to be isolation one on 4 or 5 because the defense is set. That ball is going to be in Dame's hand on the pick and roll as they come and run and picks off of Giannis. And then, but if they really want to be great, that team can be great if they push the ball up the court more and put the ball in the Giannis hands on transition offense.
Now, because we're running out of time, guys, I want to touch on some of these other teams. I think it's clear a 2-team race over here. Miami always surprises us, but right now Miami's 1-4. Any thoughts on Miami? We know they're not going to be that bad all year.
They got to get better, Ricky. They brought in a young guy from UCLA, Jaquez Vasquez or whatever his name is. He's going to be a pretty good player. But for me, Miami's not the team. The team nobody's talking about right now, for me, the Indiana Pacers.
Pacers?
That's my surprise team, yes.
A lot of firepower.
I think they got a squad. They putting up a lot of points. I know their coach very well. He was my assistant coach when I played, Rick Carlisle, and I believe in what he's established in Indianapolis. Ben Mathurin has another year of maturity. They still have Miles Turner. I believe in their team, and I could see them being easily a top 3 or top 4 team. And Miami might not even be there. I might have Atlanta Hawks and the Indiana Pacers over the Miami Heat at this point.
Derrick, I saw you. I don't know if that was a 7-Up or a Diet Coke you were drinking, but you drinking something over there that you tell me that you think the top 3 teams in Indiana Pacers. Isn't that the team just lost by 50 points to the Boston Celtics a couple of days ago?
One game, sir. That's a long season.
Yeah, but 4 games. But you're basing off of 4 games. Indiana Pacers. At the end of the day, they got one great player, and that's that's the point guard, Halliburton. They got one.
Mr. Calvin, can I say this quickly, sir?
No, I
live in San Antonio, right? I just watched the Spurs lose by 40 the other night. Okay, and then
sure.
what did they do the next night?
Well, you can expect that from a young, inexperienced team. You can't. But what they did, what impressed me about whatever they lost by, what impressed me was they down 20, 22 points, came back and beat Phoenix at Phoenix.
Well, that's my whole point. So they lost by 40, but that's only one game. It's a long season.
Yeah, but you expect that. That's a young team that he just want them to be competitive. There's no hopes of them making the playoffs. That team is going to grow and going to be competitive. And the young boy is one of the best players I've seen coming in this league in 15 years.
What do you think about Indiana? Indiana, though, do they have a chance? Does Indiana have a chance because they have an all-star point guard at Tyrese Halliburton?
Yeah, they did last year too. I look at them probably 7th, 8th in the conference. A weak conference. It's a weak conference. In Cleveland, you can't really rate them right now because they don't have all their pieces. You got Garland out and you got the center out. So they're I think they're 2-3, and they've lost 2 of those games to New York. They beat New York last night, but that's a team will get it together. They have to. I love Jay Bickerstaff, but that's a young team without the best player the second best player right now in Darius Garland.
Hey guys, we've gone over our time. I mean, we could talk all night. We could do this all freaking night. But before we get out here, I want to talk about this young fella who's down your way, D. And that's Wimbiana.
I think he's special, Ricky. I just think right now his biggest issue, 2 issues, are rebounding. As we know, he's not a very good rebounder. But that goes to my second point. Until he gets stronger, if you notice, he tries to establish position. Say they come down on the fast break, and he tries to pop into the lane really quick and establish position. Guys are doing what I call knocking him off his gate. And you look at guys like Grant Williams, they're playing him physical, and they're not letting him post up. They're bumping him off his spot. And once he learns how to deal with that kind of physicality, then the sky's the limit. But right now, he's going to have some challenges. I had a young man actually go off and curse me out and all that last night about Victor. People have to remember, this is a totally different game for him. This is not France. He just turned 19 years old, and he has to learn.
He got his hands on it.
Yeah, Ricky, Ricky, he's going to be great. His skill set is unlimited, but it's going to take time because he has to also, he's traveling, he's playing in a new country. Oh, that's one thing. So he's making an adjustment. He's making more money than he made in France, more money than he'll ever make. He's always going to be in the media. They're going to be interviewing him. So he has a lot of things on his plate. And he's a young kid. You give him time. And by the time this season rolls around after the All-Star break, the Spurs, I don't expect them to go very far this year, but he's going to be a very formidable player, and he's going to bring the rest of the players along with him. So you might not be talking about the Spurs this year, but you will be talking about them in the very near future.
Your thoughts, Matt?
Well, it's a growing learning league for young kids, and he will learn, but they don't have enough good players to really make him look great right now. You have to have you got to have some other great players around you, and Popovich, they will do that. Right now, he's learning the league. His biggest problem is in the pick and roll. When he is rolling, that's when they're pushing him around a little bit. But I think that because their offense is so spread out in the spacing, it doesn't allow him to be close to the basket enough. But he's still averaging 6-7 rebounds a game right now for the first 5 games of the season and averaging 16 points a game. That's better than any other rookie other than Holmgren. I think was averaging 15. This should be his second year. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. I think that when Tim Duncan came in the league, he was fortunate enough to have Robinson David that allowed him to be great. The spotlight is on this kid all the time. So I think offensively, ball handling, shooting ability, running the floor, basketball IQ, he has all those tangibles. And I just think each game is he's going to get better and better. And he's got a great coach that's going to mentor him. It's going to be tough on him, but he's also going to give him an opportunity to grow. And they will get better because they got a lot of draft picks and they got money to get players in there in the next couple of years. They will be one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the conference starting next year or the year after next, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, guys, we got to get out of here. Matt, this has just been fantastic, sir.
Well, you guys, thank you so much, man. You allowed me to be able to talk. I've been locked up.
You know you're coming back, sir. We're not finishing like this.
We got to have you back for sure. We'll be gone for about 2 weeks, but we'll be back. We're going to take a little extended break. But until then, from my great friend Derrick Gervin, Matt Calvin, the legend, I'm Rick Hampton. Peace, everybody.
Mr. Calvin, I love you. Thank you for coming on. Ricky, I love you.
I love you guys. With you. All right.
Y'all, everybody stay safe out there.